Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the English Story Podcast, where we use engaging stories to help you learn English in a fun and effective way. I'm Emily, and as always, I'm joined by John.
Hi, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that's really important when talking about future plans, understanding the difference between the future simple tense, will, and going to. This is a common area where English learners can get a bit confused, but don't worry, we're here to help you get it right. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly when to use will and when to use going to when you're talking about future events.
We're going to start with a story that takes place in the beautiful Irish countryside. It's about Liam, who spends a relaxing weekend away from the city. As you listen, try to notice how Liam talks about his future plans. When does he use will, and when does he use going to? After the story, we'll break down the vocabulary and then dive into the grammar. We'll explain how the future simple and going to are formed, and how you can use them in different situations.
It's going to be an informative episode, so let's get started.
Let's jump into Liam's story. Listen carefully to how he talks about his plans and future activities.
Liam is from Ireland, and he lives in Dublin, a bustling city full of life and energy. However, sometimes the noise and fast pace of city life can be overwhelming. So Liam enjoys escaping to the countryside whenever he gets the chance. This weekend, Liam is going to visit his grandparents, who live in a small village in the Irish countryside. On Friday evening, Liam packed his bags and set out for his grandparents' house. "I think I'll go for a long walk tomorrow," he thought, as he looked out at the rolling hills from the train window. He was excited about spending time in nature and getting away from the city for a couple of days. When he arrived, his grandparents were waiting for him with warm smiles and a delicious, home-cooked meal. "Tomorrow, we're going to take you to see the old castle," his grandmother said. "It's been a while since you last visited, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it." Liam smiled and said, "That sounds great. I'll also help you with the garden if you like. I'm going to plant some flowers for you." The next morning, the sun was shining brightly, and Liam knew it was going to be a beautiful day. "I'll start with a walk through the fields," he decided. "After that, I'm going to help my grandparents with their garden." As he walked through the countryside, Liam felt relaxed and at peace. The fresh air, the sound of birds, and the gentle breeze made him forget all about the busy city. Later, as promised, he helped his grandparents plant flowers in their garden. "I'll water these every day," his grandmother said, smiling. "They're going to look so beautiful when they bloom." In the afternoon, they all went to visit the old castle. It was a short drive from the village, and Liam's grandfather said, "We'll have a picnic by the castle. It's going to be lovely." Liam looked forward to spending more time outdoors and enjoying the simple pleasures of the countryside. By the end of the weekend, Liam felt refreshed and ready to return to city life. "I'll come back soon," he promised his grandparents. "This has been such a wonderful weekend."
That was a lovely story, Emily. Liam's weekend in the countryside sounds so peaceful. Let's take a moment to discuss some of the vocabulary that might be new to our listeners.
Absolutely. Let's start with the word countryside. In the story, Liam goes to the countryside, which refers to areas outside of the city that are often rural, with lots of nature like fields, forests, and small villages. It's a great place to relax and enjoy the natural environment.
Another important word is overwhelming. Liam finds the city overwhelming sometimes. When something is overwhelming, it feels like too much to handle or cope with. The noise and fast pace of city life can make you feel this way.
Right. And then there's castle. Liam visits an old castle with his grandparents. A castle is a large, historic building that was often used as a fortress or the home of a noble family in the past. Castles are usually very old and can be fascinating places to visit.
We also heard the word bloom. Liam's grandmother mentioned that the flowers they planted are going to bloom. Bloom means to produce flowers or to come into full beauty. It's a lovely word to use when talking about plants and gardens.
These words are all great for talking about nature and outdoor activities. Understanding them will help you describe similar experiences in English. Now that we've covered the vocabulary, let's move on to the grammar focus of today's episode: understanding the difference between the future simple tense will and going to.
The future simple tense and going to are both used to talk about future events, but they're used in slightly different ways depending on the situation. Let's start by explaining how each one is formed and when you should use them.
Great idea, John. First, let's talk about the future simple tense, which is formed with will plus the base form of the verb. For example, in the story, Liam says, "I think I'll go for a long walk tomorrow." Here, "I'll go" is in the future simple tense. We often use will when we're making a decision at the moment of speaking or when we're predicting something based on what we know right now.
Exactly. Will is also used for promises or offers. For instance, Liam says, "I'll help you with the garden." This is an example of using will to make a promise. We often use will when we're deciding to do something spontaneously without having planned it before.
On the other hand, going to is used when we talk about plans or intentions that we've already made before speaking. It's formed with am, is, or are, plus going to, and the base form of the verb. For example, in the story, Liam's grandmother says, "Tomorrow we're going to take you to see the old castle." This indicates that the plan to visit the castle was made before the conversation took place.
Another key use of going to is when you're predicting something based on evidence that you can see right now. For example, Liam might say, "It looks like it's going to rain," if he sees dark clouds in the sky. Here, going to is used because the prediction is based on something observable.
Let's compare the two with a few examples to make it clearer. Future simple, will. "I'll call you later." You decide this at the moment of speaking. Going to, "I'm going to call you tonight." You had already planned to do this before speaking. Future simple, will. "It will be a great day." A general prediction. Going to. "It's going to be a great day." You can see that the weather is nice, for example. One of the most common situations where you might use will is when you're making a spontaneous decision. For example, if you're with a friend and suddenly decide to grab a coffee, you might say, "I'll get us some coffee." You're making the decision at that moment, so will is the right choice.
That's right, Emily. Another situation where will is often used is when making promises or offers. For example, "I'll help you with your homework." This is something you're committing to do in the future.
Now let's talk about going to. One of the key uses of going to is for talking about plans that you've already made. For instance, "I'm going to visit my parents this weekend." You made this plan before the moment of speaking, so going to is appropriate.
Going to is also useful when making predictions based on evidence. For example, "Look at those clouds. It's going to rain." You're predicting rain because you see dark clouds in the sky.
Let's do a quick recap to make sure everything is clear. Use will for spontaneous decisions, promises, offers, and general predictions. Use going to for plans you've already made and predictions based on current evidence.
It's important to remember these differences so you can use will and going to correctly in different situations. Let's move on to some practice examples to help reinforce what we've learned.
Let's practice with a few examples. I'll give you a situation and you can decide whether to use will or going to. Here we go. Situation. You just realized you're out of milk and decide to go to the store. Answer. I'll go to the store to buy some milk. Spontaneous decision. Situation. You've planned a trip to the beach this weekend. Answer. I'm going to the beach this weekend. Pre-planned activity.
Great examples, Emily. Let's try a couple more. Situation. You see dark clouds in the sky and predict it will rain soon. Answer. It's going to rain soon. Prediction based on evidence. Situation. You promise to call a friend later. Answer. I'll call you later. Promise.
Perfect. Practicing these situations will help you feel more confident using will and going to correctly. Remember, the key is to think about whether you're making a decision on the spot, talking about a plan you've already made, or making a prediction based on what you see. Today we've explored the difference between the future simple tense, will and going to. We started with a story about Liam's relaxing weekend in the Irish countryside. which helped illustrate how these future forms are used in real-life contexts. We then discussed some key vocabulary related to nature and outdoor activities.
We also broke down the grammar, explaining when to use will and when to use going to. Remember, will is for spontaneous decisions, promises, and general predictions, while going to is for plans you've already made and predictions based on evidence.
We hope this episode has given you a clearer understanding of these future forms and how to use them effectively in your own conversations. The more you practice, the easier it will become to choose the right form when you're talking about the future.
Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a comment or a review and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes.
Keep practicing and remember to enjoy the process of learning. The more you listen and practice, the more natural these grammar points will become. Goodbye, and see you next time on the English Story Podcast.